Earlier this week, we had the Nintendo Direct releasing the Switch 2, giving us a confirmed release date of June 5th, 2025. Brand new console performance. The forking GameCube is coming back. We just got to sprinkle a little bit of tariff evasion in there too, and a couple other things that I want to talk about today. Unlike most of you, I actually couldn't watch the Nintendo Direct while it was happening. I mean, I could, but it wasn't a really nice experience. I was in my car, all right, driving. I should not be watching and driving, so I didn't do that. Obviously, please don't ban me on YouTube. And then I would only watch at the stop sign, which made my experience a little subpar. I had to come back home and watch it on my own time. It is what it is. A couple key things that stood out to me though, which to be fair, there's a lot that stood out to me. In fact, I think this might be one of the best Nintendo Directs we've had in a long time. Dust Blood, which I'll talk about that forever. That's basically Bloodborne 2. Sony, what were you doing? I don't know why Sony decided to just drop the ball on that. We've been asking for Bloodborne 2 for what feels like 20 years. It hasn't even been 20 years, but that's not my point. My point being is that we've been asking for it. They didn't give it to us. Somehow Nintendo just came right on in, whooped it up, paid them a little bit of money. And now we have this new game called Dusk Blood, which is basically the entirety of Bloodborne, but PvE on the Switch. Correction, the Switch 2. So I guess it's going to add into the success of the Switch 2, but I should probably mention why the Switch was so successful in the first place. What that has to do with Sony and Bloodborne, I actually have no idea and how I linked that together, but just pretend I made like a really nice segue, okay? Don't embarrass me on my first day back. So the Switch 2 and what it provides. Why is this such a significant moment for Nintendo and the gaming industry as a whole? For those that don't know, the Switch is Nintendo's best-selling home console and the third best of all time, so it's more than safe to assume that everyone and their mama wants to get their hands on one. We finally have 4K on a Nintendo console without the need for emulation and up to 120 hertz, which is basically frames per second for any of my younger viewers that have no idea what that means, on the console itself. Now that part is huge, but Nintendo is always late to the graphics performance party, per usual. Most of their attention comes from the console gimmicks and party exclusives. So maybe Astral Chain can finally get the performance justice it deserves. All of that to say it might be one of the most difficult consoles to get your hands on due to the confirmed but then unconfirmed price of the Switch 2. Before we dig into that thing being better or worse, let's unpack what you're getting for the price. Out of the box, we're getting an almost 8-inch 1080p screen with both HDR and VRR up to 120 frames per second, like I mentioned earlier. A handful of people feel indifferent about Nintendo giving us another LCD screen, even though we have the OLED already on the market. But from the in-person experience of others, the screen looks absolutely gorgeous with little to no glare. My biggest eye grab is finally being able to play these Switch games in 4K and 60 frames per second. Nintendo is constantly playing catch up with the other gaming titans like Sony and Xbox. This time is unfortunately no different. To be honest though, most of us don't game beyond 4K anyway. No, I'm not included in that, by the way. I gotta monitor this in 4K for a reason. After that, we have the magnetic Joy-Con 2 controllers with mouse mode. Now this part is huge. I have no idea what Nintendo was cooking with this, but I kinda like it. I wasn't exactly the target audience for the games they showed off during the Nintendo Direct, but I can see some of the vision here. Not really League of Legends per se, more like Pokemon Unite, and I guess Fortnite if you really want to get into that. The C button for game chat is cool, but how many of you are actually talking through your Switch? As far as the internal specs go, we also have the NVIDIA processor, 256 gigabytes of internal storage, which is pretty big, by the way. Like the normal Switch, if I'm not mistaken, has 64, so that's well over double. Then we also have the use of the new microSD Express card support, so you can't use your old microSD cards, which is a little unfortunate to be fair, because I definitely have a 1 terabyte in both my Switches right now, and I'm pretty sure I bought the Nintendo themed Princess Peach one with the, you know, with the crown, and it's pink. It just looks nice. All of this is supposed to bring us smoother frame rates, sharper visuals, and faster loading times to help bring the consoles up to par with modern day gaming. We also get an updated dock with 2 USB ports, an HDMI, and a LAN port. LAN being Ethernet. Please, you're playing games like Pokemon Unite or Smash. We know a new Smash Bros is coming. They're not gonna release a new Nintendo console, no Smash Bros. They've never done that before, right? So I need you guys to buy an Ethernet cable. Plug it in and play the game. No more Wi-Fi lag. Can we all do that? The dock itself allowing every single Switch 2 to output in 4K glory. And it comes with its own built-in fan system to keep the system cooled. The Switch was infamous for overheating, and some players even have footage of their Switches growing melted zombie appendages from the back. There's also a new adjustable stand with a USB-C port on the top. Thank Sephiroth, bro. I'm so tired of having to charge my OLED, but never being able to set it up in tablet mode and play at the same time. That was sarcasm, by the way. And so for all that, we can finally talk about the price. I mean, there's probably a couple other things you'd want to mention, but the other things kind of cost money, so it would just be adding into the price of the Switch 2. And I really don't want to do that, right? Like, I just want the base price, which, by the way, the base price of the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be $449.99. I'm going to shorthand that to $450, which if you want the bundled version, which is the Mario Kart edition, it's going to be $500, or is it $550? It's $550. I swear I can do math. Now, if we compare this to the original Switch for just a moment, the original Switch was $299. Again, shorthanding, that's going to turn into $300 before tax versus the $450 at a base price that we have right now. That's a pretty big jump from Nintendo. I mean, the Switch is still the Switch at the end of the day. So I feel like more people or more players are asking themselves, would that even be worth it? Should I just keep playing my Switch? And how different would the Switch 2 be from the Switch? Despite all the information I just gave you about the different performance things that'll be coming to the Switch 2. Can we just like pause real quick, me and you, Switch 2 and Switch, and like constantly saying the Switch and the Switch 2, gonna get a lot. I don't know. Now, me, myself, I was a little bit skeptical. In fact, I made a tweet about this saying that I felt like gaming was getting a little too expensive, physical gaming to be very specific, but that's a whole different thing that I'll talk about in a short regarding the price of games, especially with whatever Nintendo is doing right now. Besides that, I had to compare and contrast in order to bring myself back to reality. The PS5 launched at $399, which again, shorthand, $400 for just the digital version. And whenever the physical version got here, that bad boy was about $500. So right around the same price as the Switch 2. The cool thing about the Switch 2 is that it lands right in the middle of that price point with the ability to play physical or digital. So I guess it kind of shaves you off $50, so you don't really have to do the $500 thing, but it is what it is. Per the Switch or per Nintendo, they are all about some type of gimmick or family-friendly thing. And the Switch 2 is bringing the combination of both a home console and a portable one. If we compare this to the PS5 and the PlayStation Portal, which is another $200, we're already over said $200 just for the sake of portability. And even worse is that you're forced to be on Wi-Fi in order to play the thing. The PS5 controller design makes it just slightly awkward enough to fit into a slim backpack, and to be honest, it just doesn't have the same play games with your friend vibe that Nintendo brings. Any of you guys remember PictoChat from the original DS? Did I just age myself? Both devices only output 1080p resolution in portable mode, but the Switch 2 is projecting to push up to 120 frames per second compared to the PlayStation Portable only being able to output 60. Mind you, both the resolution and the frame rate of the PlayStation Portal happen to depend on the Wi-Fi. And you know what? In fact, hold on. I actually have the Portal right here. For anybody that has no idea what I'm talking about, or you've never seen one, or you have, you know, again, why am I repeating myself? This little thing is cool. I like it. It's nice, but I can't play it anywhere else besides my house, or a friend's house that happens to have really good Wi-Fi, or my parents' house that also happens to have really good Wi-Fi because I used to pay for that. So it is what it is. But if I were to take this outside to a park or to the mall, or I'm getting my hair cut, or, you know, wherever, I can't actually function with that at all, to the point where I do consider bringing my Switch Lite. So I can easily imagine the Switch 2 winning that war. The additional fact that the Joy-Cons are now magnetic, act as two separate controllers or a mouse, supposedly have reduced any drifting issues and still comes in at a cheaper price than the PS5. After I looked at all this, I feel like the price is justified. Again, I was looking at this from a very skewed perspective, the consumer, if you will, everything going on in the United States, and I didn't like it. I'm like, man, $450 for a Switch, I could easily get that for like, maybe they could reduce it for $400, right? Like knock off 50 and then it's $399.99. That'd probably feel a little better, but what's $50 more, right? I mean, I'm not poor, not broke. I'm not broke, but I can't really talk about the Switch or end off the pricing of the Switch without talking about what recently has been revealed: the tariffs. Because why the fuck not? On April 2nd, hours after the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct showcase, our president, Donald Trump, announced his plan to impose a minimum 10% tariff on effectively all goods coming into the country. And while that 10% may seem small, Trump decided he was going to impose higher tariffs on the countries with higher trade deficits with the United States. So for whatever reason, Trump is playing Civilization 7 IRL with every single country that we possibly have connections with. So naturally, like anybody with a brain that doesn't want to pay more money, they found a way around the system. Instead of continuing to source parts through China, Nintendo shifted production towards Vietnam and Cambodia in order to avoid the heavy hit on tariffs. But guess what Trump's announcement earlier meant for Nintendo? a potentially larger tariff percentage. And wait, there's more. What do we get as the consumers? These tariffs going upwards of almost 50% means that we potentially have to pay upwards of $100+ more for the Switch 2. And so that would probably increase the overall price, not just for the Switch 2, but for the games as well. And for whatever reason, because they have to reflect that, they're also increasing the price of digital games. I know. It sucks. I don't like it, and I really wish we would go back in time to where digital games meant that we had them very cheap, or rather significantly cheaper than physical. I'd even be okay with digital going to $50 and then physical staying around the $70 realm. That'd be kind of nice. But I think what really keeps me from caring about the physical digital split is the fact that physical games in today's gaming era don't have anything in the case. If I grab any one of those Nintendo cases, you know what? Astral Chain, physical, open the case, nothing inside. Why? Because it's in my Switch. But that's really not the point. The point is that there's literally nothing inside of the case at all. You buy a deluxe edition of the physical and you might get an art book, you might get a sticker book, but I guess you don't get any instruction manuals or anything else that we used to get inside of a PS2 or PS1 case. That's my little mini rant. That's my bad. Continuing on. Even if the tariffs are pretty bad, or rather the price of the Switch itself is pretty questionable, we still have to factor in the rumored launch titles. Some of these are confirmed, by the way, but then others are not. So I'm just going to list them off as we go along. Mario Kart World, please bring back Sonic Riders. Mario Kart's pretty cool. I don't have any issues with that. And I think it actually looks really nice compared to what we have right now. And I'm hoping that they learned their lesson and they'll keep up to date with Mario Kart, or at least prepare to make a new one every couple of years. After that, we have Donkey Kong Bonanza, which looks like a pretty cool redesign similar to Mario Odyssey of a 3D based Donkey Kong. Now, me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Donkey Kong, not because I don't like him, but I just never really got into the games. Looking at Bonanza makes me really interested in playing that, and I can easily see myself getting this when it comes out around July. After that, we have a new Hyrule Warriors, which was the biggest bait from the stream that completely took the smile off my face. Please stop releasing Hyrule Warrior games. I might be the only one that doesn't like Hyrule Warrior games. They're cool for like 3 minutes tops. After that, I don't want to play them anymore. It's a waste of $60. Again, my own personal preference. We could have had a Zelda game. And yes, I know there's already a Zelda game on the Switch, but I wanted a Zelda game that looks like Breath of the Wild, or at least Twilight Princess, so that I can play the game. Come on. Kirby Riders came out after that, or was revealed after that, which honestly might be Sonic Riders in disguise. Metroid Prime 4 looks pretty interesting. We've been waiting on this for a hot minute. In fact, I think we've been waiting on Metroid Prime 4 since the Switch was revealed itself. Maybe I'm dating for sure, but I'm pretty sure like a year or two after the Switch came out, we got some announcements or teasers about Metroid Prime 4, and now we're just now getting the game. That's a long time. Some other cool things that we're getting is going to be these expansion packs, or rather these upgrades from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. So if you happen to own any of these games digitally, you actually get a free or paid for, depending on how generous Nintendo decides to be, upgrade into the Switch 2 version of that game. This will of course bring different performance things, upscaling to 4K, maybe a 60 frames per second patch, who knows. Now, when I saw Tears of Kingdom on the reveal list for this entire feature, I thought it was pretty cool. I actually haven't beaten this game, so I might wait until the Switch 2 to maximize my experience, but we'll see how it goes. All in all, I'd wait a little closer to June before you start dropping pre-orders. Then we have the third-party titles hitting the Switch 2. Some of my favorites were Elden Ring, obviously, Hades 2, which again, another game that I haven't beaten because gacha consumes my life. Bravely Default Remaster. I've beaten all the Bravely Defaults and I'm super excited for the remaster. So hopefully, well, I guess it's not really a hopefully, but I don't know. I just wanted to be really good and I wanted to run nice on the Switch 2. Is that too much to ask? Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4. Definitely gotta go back to play the first two again because I just don't remember a lot of what happened. But it's nice to see that Deltarune is gonna be a launch title for the Switch 2. I mentioned it earlier, but we can talk about it now. Dusk Blood. I love this. I don't even have the game yet, but I love it. Automatically 10 out of 10. I don't care what it's going to get rated. It could have the worst performance issues possible. Knock on fake wood. Please don't give us a horrible Bloodborne 2 successor. Let it be nice, okay? From Software, I trust you. You have a new, nice, powerful Switch. You could do it. You could absolutely make the best game. Just make Bloodborne 2, call it a day. But the PvPvE experience that we did get to see a little bit of throughout the Dusk Blood trailer is pretty interesting. I have no idea how that's going to work. I've never really done that. The closest thing that I've done is a seamless co-op mode with Elden Ring, or even sometimes there's a seamless, oh yeah, there's a new one. There's a new seamless with Dark Souls 1, or is it 2? I don't remember which Dark Souls, I'm pretty sure it's 1, but there's a new seamless co-op mode that's happening with the original Dark Souls on PC. I think that's kind of nice. So maybe Duskblood is going to work similarly to how those mods work. Of course, I can't forget Hollow Knight Silksong. Yay! Everybody's been waiting for this for a little bit. I'm not the biggest fan, not because I don't like it, right? Like I do like Hollow Knight, but I'm not the biggest fan because it just kind of feels like when you're getting teased for so long, you never really get it. You just kind of eventually forget about it. The same thing that happened with Bloodborne. So I can understand why people who are excited, my boy Nick loves Hollow Knight. He's been waiting on it for a little bit, so I know he's yelling at the top of his lungs, just like I did for Duskblood. Maybe that's kind of weird. Oh, and I cannot forget about the forking GameCube. The GameCube is coming back in modern day gaming. You know how cool that is? Like Sonic Riders, I can actually get Sonic Riders now, depending on if they give it to us or not. Nintendo's super stingy with that, by the way. It's okay, wait, and I didn't explain that part. For those that don't know, GameCube is coming back for the Switch 2, and it's going to be a part of the Super Big Boy Expansion Pass, whatever it's called, service, the subscription service, online service for Nintendo. It's going to be a part of that. You got to buy the Big Boy Edition, which right now is priced around $40. I could easily see them trying to increase this price, but from the data that I gathered, the information that I was told, this is going to be a Switch 2 exclusive, meaning that the only way you're going to be able to get access to the GameCube function is through a Switch 2. So I don't know if that's worth increasing the price since you're already paying for the Switch 2 as it is. I guess that's kind of like gatekeeping you price-wise. So hopefully that's the case. My biggest things I'm excited about though were the Animal Crossing, I forget the name of it, but the one that's on the GameCube. That one's pretty cool. I never got to fully experience that due to Hollywood Videos shutting down. Pokemon XD, Gale of Darkness, and Pokemon Coliseum, both of which I really miss playing. And since we're already talking about going back in time, we can also talk about the backwards capability or compatibility for the Nintendo Switch 2. This basically supporting all of the previous Switch games, which is, I guess, kind of like what they were doing with the 3DS or the new 3DS, but the new 3DS didn't really have a new system. It was just a new 3DS, but it still played 3DS games. That whole thing was a scam, but whatever. Anyway, they've already shown us some of the rosters of the games from the Switch library that are going to be getting these Switch 2 performance upgrades. Scarlet and Violet, Animal Crossing, Astral Chain, thank goodness, Legends Arceus, and Tears of the Kingdom, followed by a lot more. All of this is important to note, or at least take note of, because it's important for Nintendo to be able to start off strong. They need a strong launch. They need strong launch titles. They need a reason for people to want to go out and spend $500, $600, $700 on the console, all the packages, all the accessories, and a couple games, especially with families with children, right? Or like young kids, they have to have the Switch. They don't actually have to, like, you don't have to buy your kid that. But me being a semi-spoiled parent, or rather a semi-spoiled child from parents that love the crap out of me, it's always nice, right? You get straight A's and you get your kid a Switch. Who am I? I'm not a parent. Don't listen to me. I will say though, we don't want another PS5 incident where we have a PS5 and then there's only 1 to 2 games on launch for the next couple of months that we have access to play. Mind you, I'm a Demon Souls kind of dude, so whenever the PS5 came out and then we saw Demon Souls, I quite literally only pre-ordered the PS5 for Demon Souls. I didn't care about anything else. I really just wanted to re-experience that game. Overall, I think the Switch 2 has a plan. I think it's nice. I think what's going to happen with Nintendo, bar the whole tariff thing going on right now, is that they might be able to have a very successful launch. I do believe Nintendo has an opportunity right now that a lot of us have been kind of getting on them for a bit now. Pokemon Legends Arceus or Scarlet and Violet is a really good example. That game was a buggy mess. Sword and Shield was a buggy mess, and this is coming from somebody that used to play VGC pretty competitively, or at least try to get into it competitively and going to the tournaments and whatnot. The Switch is just bugged out. I really hope that the Switch 2 doesn't have as many bugs. I don't think it's going to have 0 bugs. Nothing has 0 bugs, but I'm hoping that all the performance upgrades that it's going to be able to get, finally going to be able to kind of like match what the PS5 or even the Xbox is able to do. I don't care too much about the graphics per se. I just want the system to run smooth. I want it to run very fine, and I want the games to look good. It's always baffled me how Super Mario Odyssey, being as vibrant and colorful as it is, runs perfectly fine. I have very little issues playing Odyssey or playing Odyssey at the time, and then I play something like Astral Chain or Pokemon, and it's a complete mess. I don't know if that's a developer thing or if it's just the capabilities or limitations of the Switch. There's also the fact that the Nintendo Switch 2 is competing with, again, PS5 and Xbox, and technically the Steam Deck. I know there's been plenty of tweets talking about that with the Steam Deck being here now, and people saying, oh, I'm so glad that I bought my Steam Deck. Oh, glad that I got the Steam Deck OLED, by the way, during the Steam Summer. Hey, listen, I have a Steam Deck too. That is not the Switch. All right, it's only digital. It only has games on the Steam, which, mind you, that's not a bad thing at all. Okay, I play tons of crap from the Steam Deck all the time, but I can't play certain games comfortably. And I think that might be a thing that I might talk about later on in a whole different video. The difference between playing something emulated or modded or whatever it is on a PC maybe versus playing it on an actual optimized console, if the Switch 2 is gonna be optimized. That's a really important part. There's a lot of potential with the Switch 2, long term at least. I feel like we've had the Switch for well over 10 years. I could be wrong on that, but it just kind of feels that way. But the Switch 2 does have a good bit of time that it could go for. With all the new games that they could bring out, like a new Animal Crossing, I know people will love that. The resurgence of the Switch 2 is now probably going to help bring back portable gaming. And maybe now Nintendo can stop holding developers back from producing high-performing games. To wrap things up, let me know your thoughts and opinions on how you feel about the Switch 2, the prices, the tariffs, and everything like that going on. For me personally, again, I don't have an issue with the price anymore like I did before, especially after looking a little bit more into what's going on. I am pretty excited for the Switch 2 and what it could reveal, but I do want to see a little more. We have about 2 months before the console officially comes out. With 2 months of information, Nintendo usually likes to ramp up information as the game or the console is getting ready to release, and we get a lot more coming from it. I'm hoping that we get more launch titles announced, or if anything, maybe more digital titles that we know we're going to get the upgrades. That way it might be making, it might make the purchase a little more worth it. One of the things that I do want to point out, because I was going to do it too and now I'm not, trading in your Switch for another one. If you have the original Switch, like a day one, V1, V2 Switch, and it's not hacked, go ahead and trade it in, right? You're getting a huge upgrade. But if you already have the OLED or one of the newer Switches and you're trying to trade that in, GameStop or wherever you can trade it in at, it's probably going to give you a little bit less, maybe I think like a third of the price. It might be worth it, but then you could also just take that older Switch and either sell it off to somebody for half the price of the Switch 2, or you can give it to a family member, a friend, a child, whatever, and I'm sure they would appreciate it because the Switch is still going to be able to play with the Switch 2, and it'll still have all the same games minus the Switch 2 games, of course, but it is what it is. Free console is a free console. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Like the video, comment, subscribe. Smell you later.